be that we'll do just a quick round of introductions of our panelists. And then each of them will speak for about 10 minutes about each of the nationally competitive scholarships that they applied for. And then we'll have some time for Q&A at the end. And so if you have a question, please post it in the chat feature. And you can either post it for everyone or you can post it just for me. That's your call. So with that, let's do a round of introductions of our panelists. Let's start with you, Bella. I think I have to unmute you. There we go.
Okay. Hi, I'm Bella. I'm a fourth year, so I'm graduating soon. I'm majoring in biochemistry and psychology, and I'm here speaking on behalf of the Goldwater Scholarship.
Fantastic. Welcome, Bella. Miriam, do you want to go up next?
Sure. So I'm Miriam. I'm a graduate student PhD student in History of Science program, and I'm speaking on behalf of the Critical Language Scholarship.
Fantastic. Welcome. Nikki.
Hi, Miriam, I love that you're wearing your shirt. That's awesome. I'm Nikki, and I graduated from OSU in 2018, and I'm going to speak about my Fulbright English teaching assistantship and then my current application process for the Marshall Scholarship.
And Traven? Can't hear you. Sorry. You're unmuted on my end. Okay, well, while we figure that out, I'll introduce you. Sorry. Traven Pleasant is a PhD student in anthropology who had a Fulbright study research grant to Panama last year. Hopefully we can figure out the audio for you, Traven. And also joining us and a little bit later will be Jordan Conger, who is an alum of OSU. He graduated in 2017 in mathematical economics, and he's been awarded the Stanford Knight Hennessy Scholars Program Award entering Stanford University in fall of 2020. So he'll be joining us in just a little bit. So without further ado, why don't we start with you, Bella, to talk a little bit more about the Goldwater Scholarship.
Okay. The Goldwater Scholarship is, according to the website, it's one of the oldest and most prestigious national scholarships. This scholarship recognizes students who, either in their sophomore or junior years of college, they can apply, who are in STEM, so the natural sciences, engineering, and math, who show a potential to have some sort of contribution to those fields in research. So you have to show a strong commitment to those career paths, and yeah, show some sort of potential. So when I was nominated for the Goldwater Scholarship, it was a time in when I just gotten back from my first research experience, my first real one. It was a summer internship, and I, through that experience, really fell in love with the research process, but before had not really considered research for a career. So when I was nominated, I was pretty surprised. When I met with Leanne to talk about the scholarship application, she talked a lot about how the process of applying was really helpful. So that was really one of the main reasons I decided to apply. And I'm really glad because the application process for Goldwater, you have to talk a lot about why you want to do research as your career. And so that gave me the opportunity to think about, to really reflect on why I wanted to do this career path. And why I felt committed to it. So at the time, after doing research, I decided that I wanted to pursue a career in medicine and research and do translational medicine research. And so I had an opportunity to talk more in depth about why I was committed to this path, which has been really helpful now that I am applying to MD, PhD programs. And I've had the experience of being able to articulate that in my Goldwater application. It's been really helpful now that I'm working on my personal statement for those. So yeah, that was, the application process was really helpful in that way. In terms of actually receiving the scholarship, that was really impactful for me professionally and academically because, well, I hope that it makes me a more competitive applicant when I'm applying to graduate schools. Personally, because receiving the award, it was sort of this like this objective national other person saying like, oh, you have what it takes. So it was a huge boost in confidence. It wasn't just, you know, the people in my life that care about me saying like, I think you really have what it takes to make a commitment to research. So that was really awesome for me personally. Yeah, I think that was the majority of what I had to say for Goldwater Scholarship. Do you think there's more to add, Leanne? Or
what advice would you have to a student who would consider applying for the scholarship?
Advice, yeah. So I would say definitely take the time to reflect on your own. Why is it that you're actually wanting to do this career path in research? If you're like me and you're thinking of combining research with some other path, like say medicine in my case, or veterinary studies, dental, think about why you really want to have that combined path. Or if you're focused on research and doing a PhD, why is it that you want to do that? And try to get beyond the just, oh, I want to help people. Oh, I'm curious. Like, get beyond those easy answers, because that being able to reflect beyond that is what I think helps me be able to articulate why I'm actually passionate about this, and why I feel like there's a purpose in this career path for me. And another piece of advice, definitely look to your mentors and advisors for help as you're preparing this application. Yeah, they can give a lot of really, really helpful advice. So.
And for those of you who aren't already familiar with my office, its purpose is not just to inform people about the opportunities, but it's also to serve as a support system for students who want to apply. So you don't have to feel like you're embarking on what may feel like an intensive application process on your own. My staff and I are available to you throughout the entire process to bounce around ideas, to answer any questions you have, to read and give feedback on your writing, give you guidance on whom you choose for your letters of recommendation and things like that. One final thing, Bella, can you explain what some of the benefits are of the award?
So before I get into that, I wanted to say, like, yeah, Leanne and the Prestigious Scholarships Office were super helpful. So definitely reach out as much as you can if you're applying. Benefits of the scholarship itself. You're part of the Goldwater Scholar community. So I got an invitation to be part of this community of other scholars. That was really cool, on LinkedIn and Slack. And it's people from really all over, and you get to connect with them. Like I said, I think putting it on your resume, be more competitive to different applications. There is a financial benefit, so you can get up to $7,500 in scholarships, depending on other circumstances. Yeah, those are the main benefits to winning the scholarship.
Sophomores and junior undergraduates are eligible to be nominated, and OSU is able to nominate up to 5 students per year. It's always been 4, but as of this year, they allow us to nominate an additional student if one of them is a transfer student, which is pretty fantastic. So we have a standing Goldwater committee on our campus that reviews all of the applications and chooses the 4 nominees. And we have a lot of amazing students in undergraduate research, and so it's always competitive. But any student at the sophomore or junior level who aspires to advance graduate study and has an outstanding academic record and some experience with undergraduate research and an interest in a research career is invited to apply. Do you have anything else you want to add, Bella?
No, not at this point. If there's any questions at the end, I'd be happy to help answer.
And here I'm going to embarrass you and tell everybody that you're also a semifinalist for the Fulbright this year. She's a semifinalist for the Fulbright to Spain. So we're fingers crossed that well, you will have news soon.
Yeah, I really want this. It'd be really, really cool.
Great. Well, anyone who has questions about the Goldwater, feel free to put a question in the chat, either to me or to everyone. Let's move on to the Critical Language Scholarship. Want to take it from here, Miriam?
The Critical Language Scholarship. Oh wait, am I muted? You can hear me. Okay. So the Critical Language Scholarship is a fully funded State Department scholarship to go study a critical language for a summer. It's open for undergraduates and graduate students, and it can happen after the summer you've graduated. So, so up through that summer. And there are 15 languages. You can look on their website. They're not any of the sort of standard languages. So it's not Spanish or French. I went for Russian. And when you apply, you don't pick the site where you're going to be sent to, but you pick the language. And each language has different sort of levels of proficiency. So some languages you don't have to have ever studied the language at all. Others, you have to have like 1 or 2 years of proficiency. It might be 3. And I think it's up to 2. And I know that at OSU, we don't have like a lot of languages. So for example, we don't have Russian, but you can do self-study can count towards those like years of studying because they don't test your ability until after you've been accepted into the program and then you get placed accordingly. So when I say fully funded, it's like door to door from Corvallis to your country, and including a 3-day orientation in DC or 2-day orientation in DC. You also get some spending money, all food, transportation, housing, everything's covered. So it's a super awesome opportunity to learn a new language or to get better at a language. And one of the benefits of it, and aside from like having a summer where you're fully immersed in a country with the language, you get a 1-year hiring preference with the State Department. So that means that there are jobs that have, like hiring preferences. And if you meet the basic qualifications, you're automatically looked at above any sort of regular person, if that makes sense. So that's a really, really cool thing. There is no age gap on the Critical Language Scholarship. You just have to be a full-time student, and you can even be a community college, although that probably doesn't apply to you guys, but you just have to be a full-time student in undergraduate or graduate. And like I said, it can be the summer after you've graduated as well. And you can get the Critical Language Scholarship twice in a lifetime. So I've actually received it twice, so I'm no longer eligible to get it again. It's really hard to get it the second time because you have to make a case as to like why you need it again. And so I was really lucky to get it the second time. Both times were for me for Russian. And yeah, okay, so that's that. So this summer I was in Nizhny Novgorod, which is like a city kind of east of Moscow, like 8 hours or so. But when you look on a map, it looks right next to it because Russia's so big. And so what you do every day is you go to class, you live with a host family, so you're like fully immersed. You're supposed to be taking a language pledge where you speak your language 24/7. Of course, they don't monitor you when you're at home, but what you put in is what you get out. And there's like cultural programs. So like we went to museums, we went to factories, we went to a gas factory, like petroleum gas. We made like ornaments, we went to a gingerbread factory. We went on a scavenger hunt. You do like these overnight trips. And then we got like some free weekends. We also did bowling for 4th of July. It was kind of crazy, like Russian style. And you get a language partner. So that's a really cool person that they kind of ask you for your interests and they kind of try to match you up. And my language partner was like right on, as were most people. And that's the person that you can like talk to when you maybe can't talk to your host family, or like you're having trouble with adjusting with the like culture. But all of it's in your host language. So it's like really good for getting better at a language. For me, academically, it's been like amazing. I do Soviet history. So being able to, I'll answer the question. So being able to learn Russian has made it so that I can do dissertation research in a like much more professional way and advanced way. My first time that I got it, it was able to get me so I was competitive for an internship at the US State Department in Moscow, which I got. So like having that was a really cool like boost. And it's really, really prestigious, especially for like languages. If you want to show the sort of ability to speak language that you have this like language ability, it can really help. Like I said, getting that State Department internship. And I was able to jump from an intermediate level to advanced. So I'm basically fluent now in 1 summer. And it, again, it's what you put into what you take out. And they have, the other benefit is that you get official certification for your level. And it lasts for 3 years. So some jobs, if you sort of want to say, you know, I'm advanced or I'm intermediate, this is an official certification that kind of has like standards of qualifications called OPI. And you can use that to be like to verify your level of language. And it lasts for 3 years. So you, in each cohort, we had about 20 students, and we were split into three classes, like levels. And so I was in class with like, I don't know, 6 or 7 students or so. And you get really, you know, you get close. Everyone, of course, there's like people that get along better than others, but everyone's there for the same goal. And it's a really cool experience. And let's see. Oh, my advice is just like Bella said, use Leanne's office. Everyone that was on the critical language scholarship used their Leanne at their university to get in. Not without exception. I don't think it's possible to get this scholarship without having someone like Leanne that can help you, because she definitely knows like how to make your vision work for CLS. And the only other thing is that for the application, because it's a critical language scholarship, you have to make a connection to why you need to study your language for the US government's like security, or for there's sort of, that has to be this kind of connection. And what I would say is there was a person, for example, on my program who is studying costume design. So she was able to make a connection between costume design and critical State Department needs. So it doesn't have to be, you know, like if you're not studying, I don't know, bioweapons, you're not going to make it. And they're looking for diverse students. They're not just looking for the political scientists. I'm doing history, you know, they're looking for broad. So a lot of STEM, there were quite a few STEM students actually who were there. So that's sort of, you can make it work anyway. And I see there's another question. Yeah, if you have another language, it can be beneficial only in the sense that it shows that you're like more cultured, because a big part of the critical language scholarship is they want to make sure that you're not going to like freak out when you're there, that you're going to be able to absorb and handle it. And students who have never traveled abroad, I think, have a slightly harder time to make that clear to the committee, because they want to make sure that you're going to like, you're going to take advantage of it. So if you speak another language, you can kind of make that convey to them that you have this sort of ability to like understand different cultures or something like that. I don't know if that makes sense. Leanne, do you have any other questions? Or that's sort of my spiel.
No, I think you covered it really well.
Okay.
The Critical Language Scholarship is due in November of each year for the following summer program. And it is one award in which you do have to be currently enrolled as a student to apply. As Miriam said, you can get it for the summer immediately following your graduation, which is great. So if you're getting ready to finish your undergraduate studies, you become eligible again if you go to graduate school to get it, or get it again in Miriam's case, who's actually received it twice. So all of the awards, by the way, we're talking about today are listed on our website at topscholars.oregonstate.edu. And so that's where you can get some of the basic information, and also set an appointment with me through my online appointment scheduling, which is available on the homepage. Any final thoughts, Miriam?
No, but I would just say, I mean, yes, do it. It's an awesome scholarship, especially if you want to learn a language that's not Spanish or French. And and like I said, self-study can count. So that's a really, if it needs a language requirement, it's just really a unique opportunity to learn a new language and to get better at it. So.
Yeah, and what's really cool too is that there are languages, as you noted, that do not have a prerequisite. If you can think of a really great reason to study Turkish or Azerbaijani, those are Swahili, those are some of the ones that don't have a prerequisite. And so if you can think of a really good reason why the State Department should invest in you to study one of those languages, by all means, you should apply. Okay, so let's move on to Nikki for the Fulbright English Teaching Assistantship.
Hi, am I on? Okay, great. This is not what I want. Bringing up my notes so I don't forget things. So I'm going to talk about the Fulbright program and my experience with that, because it's a very broad program. There's over 470 programs in over 125 countries. So I obviously cannot speak to all of those experiences, just my own. But I did the program that's the English Teaching Assistantship. So that's one of the options. You can also go abroad for graduate study, to do research. They have special fellowships in certain programs like journalism and public health, and a few other ones that are special grants within that. But I did an English teaching assistantship in Germany, and I applied obviously in my senior year. I was a student in public health and I had a minor in German. And I was really interested in maintaining that German language and really improving my fluency. I also just had a desire to go abroad and see what I could learn. And I have an interest in education and the ties it has with public health. And so I was interested in practicing teaching as well. And so I went abroad. The Fulbright is a 10-month grant. So we started in September and I was there until the end of June for the German school year. And they place you, it depends on your country, but you are placed in a different level of school. So I was in Realschule Plus, which is basically 5th grade to 10th grade kids. And it also depends on your country what your teaching environment looks like. But I worked for 15 hours a week. I had 12 different classrooms. And then I also did after school clubs. So I did an English club. And then I also worked with I created a theater club, which was small, but very mighty. And we had a lot of fun. And so it depends on what country you're in though, because some other scholars that I met, they were teaching like a full class all day, whereas I was an assistant teacher. So I would go into the classroom and some days I would create my own lesson and I would talk about something in US politics or culture or just like, what I normally ate at home, just to give them a different perspective. But then other times, it would be mostly the German teacher and I would kind of be there to just assist in having a native English speaker because they don't really have that experience very much. So that was a really cool aspect of it. I also, while I was there, got to take part in other events and opportunities. So I enrolled at the Hochschule, which is kind of like a technical college, and I took German language classes. You could also take other community classes, but I just really wanted to focus on my language skills. And then I also volunteered with a German-American community organization that was really fostering relationships between the two countries. And so I was lucky enough to have other Fulbright scholars living in my similar area. And so we got together and we would do presentations to future English teachers about our US states and where we came from and how to give lessons in English. And we also made videos about like US holidays that they could show in their classrooms. Sorry, I'm sitting outside and it's a little cold, so I'm like a little bit shaky. I thought it would be warmer, but the sun went down. So that was my Fulbright year. I mean, there was a lot of stuff. I also got to do a lot of traveling, which was great. Fulbright also has a lot of opportunities while you're abroad to go to events that they host. So the biggest one was we had the Berlin seminar. So they had us all they paid for us to go to Berlin, and it was a 3-day think it was 3 days, a 3-day conference with a bunch of great panelists and discussions. And we went out to like a club together and just had dinners, and it was really, really wonderful. And then they also had other opportunities. I didn't go, and I kick myself like every day because I'm sad I didn't go, but people got to go for the Fulbright Award that they awarded to Angela Merkel, the chancellor. And so people got to meet her, which is amazing. And Fulbright paid for them to go to that. So that's just pretty phenomenal. Yeah, so that is my experience with the Fulbright ETA. And I think, like I said, my biggest draw for going was the language acquisition. I was just really interested in actually speaking to native German speakers and just being in that environment. And I think that it definitely helped. And I think similar to what Miriam said, it's what you put in is what you get out. So, you know, while you're there, you could live with the host family, you could live with exchange students, you can live on your own. There's a lot of different ways. Fulbright is kind of hands off once you're in the country. So you have a lot of opportunity to find out what works best for you. And I think professionally, I just gained a lot of interpersonal skills, communication skills, kind of just figuring out how to be abroad and how to manage difficult situations when you don't really know what's going on, you don't know the culture that well, and you are kind of unfamiliar with the language, which I just think is a good life skill to have. And so now in my life, I'm also applying or looking to apply for the Marshall Scholarship, which is awarded to, according to the website, high achieving students that want to study graduate degrees in the UK and have an interest in promoting American and British partnership and culture. And so I'm really hoping to go back abroad to the UK and get a graduate degree in public health. And so I'm kind of in the process of that. And then also looking at the other Fulbright graduate study programs, which have ones for specific universities, but also open research grants. And so just kind of looking at my options there to see what fits best with my skills and my goals and where I hope to go. So, and then I think the piece of advice is the last part. And I feel like everyone has already said that Leanne is awesome and you should work with her. And I definitely agree with that. I would also say something that I learned working with her in her office, and that I've heard a lot from other scholarship advisors, is just to be really authentic in your application and really try to speak to your own story and what drives you, which can really be hard. And I think Bella kind of talked about that, like, what is your reason for doing this? And so it really does help to be able to articulate that and really show off who you are and what can you bring. And you know, you want to be yourself because that's all you can be, right? So yeah. All right. Thank you.
So the application process for the Fulbright U.S. student program is such that students apply a whole year ahead of when they actually go. So the current competition that just opened is for the 2021-2022 academic year. And so for students who would want to apply for that, they can start the application now. And now is a great time to be thinking about what country you would want to go to, what type of grant you would want, if it would be the study research grant, which Traben's going to talk about in a minute, or the English teaching assistantship, thinking about the different components of the application, the essays, the letters of recommendation, and my office is available to support. We are advising entirely via Zoom right now, which is fine because it's something I do a lot anyway. But we don't expect there to be any interruptions we hope there will be no interruptions in the next Fulbright application cycle because it's so far ahead into the future. So it's kind of nice to be able to think hopefully into the future at the present time. So why don't we move on, unless Nikki has any final comments? Yes, no?
I would say do any of these scholarships. Apply for anything and everything because they're all so much fun. And the application is kind of a bear, but if you get through that, it's totally worth it.
Awesome. I love that. Okay, so let's see if Traben is able to join us with audio. Are you good?
Can you hear me?
Oh, fantastic. Yes. Take it away. Fulbright U.S. Student Program, Study Research Grants.
Right on. Yeah, study research grant scholar. I'll just start off by seconding that you need to go to Leanne's office and check out the templates of successful applicants too that she has in her office, and that's very useful. So my Fulbright Research Student Scholar Award was to Panama, specifically at Bocas del Toro, which is in the northwestern part of Panama in the Caribbean islands. I worked on two specific islands there. One was Afro-Caribbean and the other was indigenous, a group of people called the Nobe people. And I took boats back and forth doing surveys and interviews. I was studying, I was researching barriers to education and access to technology and how technology might help people overcome those barriers, for example, through online education or other virtual means, which is pretty important right now. But there's no universities in the communities, and there's only one high school with a small computer center. So I was essentially investigating a potential future for them. And these are some things that they were talking about too. I partnered with an NGO there called Give and Surf, and you'll have to get an affiliate. That's part of this whole process. But a lot of people use universities. Like I said, there's no universities in Bocas del Toro, so I had to find a different affiliate. But I think you can be flexible with that, but I think that's an important connection you should make early on, is finding an affiliate who will vouch for you and who will look good on your application. In terms of the experience, it was probably one of the best experiences of my life. I chose a place that I would go to for vacation as a place to do research. I advise other people to do that. There were some interesting days. There were hiccups there. I brought my wife and my daughter there, so that was kind of different for me, but we had a good time. We traveled all over the islands and through Panama, and we got to know a lot of people in the local community. We worked on our Spanish. I speak Spanish pretty well, and it was really good after coming back from the field, but language is important when you go. Academically, the award has helped me tremendously. It's been momentous into other awards. Or I got a postdoc recently, and it really helped the work that I did. And Fulbright just looks great along with, like the other awardees mentioned, these are prestigious scholarships, so they look good on a resume. So that helped me get the postdoc and the research that came with it. Academically, that was professional, excuse me. Academically, that counted as my field work for my PhD. So it was super important to get it, a critical time for me being in my last year. And the publications I'll get out of it are very good for my academic and professional future. In terms of advice, I would give anyone the advice I would give to anyone getting the Fulbright Award is to do lots of research. Like I said, establish an affiliate. And if you can visit, right now is a really tough time, but like Leanne said, this may open up, so be optimistic about it in your applying. But if you can, try to take a visit or make sure you work on your language skills and do a strong amount of historical research, because it'll all come out to sort of dress your application as a more feasible, knowledgeable base that the reviewers might find you as a better candidate. So all those things speak to feasibility. The other advice I would give is to understand the visa requirements. That was one thing that surprised me, is when you travel, there's all kinds of documentation that you don't necessarily understand is going to be very thorny, and sort of getting things notarized and how the rules work in whatever country you decide to go to could be a headache or a bear. As yeah. So that, and hopefully you guys aren't bringing if you are bringing your family, really prepare for the visa stuff. But if you're alone, it's a little different. And then be flexible about the countries that you decide. If you look at the website, I mentioned this in a different panel, that there are countries where 100 people or 200 people will apply, and your percentages of getting the award may be less. In Panama, it was only 11 people the year before, so my percentage was quite high. So if you are flexible in terms of the country, and you're going for more of an experience or have a broad sort of scholarly interest, I'd advise you to look at different countries that might give you a higher percentage based on how many people apply for that country, which is available on the website. And yeah, that was pretty much, I mean, there's a lot that went on, but in terms of the questions that were posed, that's my best advice.
Trayvon, do you want to talk a little bit about the actual application process and what it entails?
Yeah. Well, initially, yeah, there was two parts basically. I don't remember what you call the first, Leanne. If you, what was that first sort of test we had with? We got vouched by some kind of process you had with where two people showed up to sort of vet us, I guess.
Yeah. So about a month before each national deadline, this year it's October 13th, we invite a panel of OSU community members to read and give feedback on every candidate's application. So that's an opportunity for them to get to know you a little bit and talk a little bit about or get to know some of your personal characteristics that they can speak to in endorsing you as a candidate. But also it's an opportunity for them to give you feedback, and then you can take that feedback and make final revisions before the national deadline. So I'm available to you throughout the process, but then at that very final level of review, you get an outsider's perspective on your application and then another opportunity to make revisions. And so we have that internal process because when currently enrolled students apply, they have to apply through OSU and get OSU's endorsement for your application. And so that allows the committee to get to know you a little bit and then write some things about your personal characteristics when writing the endorsement to the Fulbright committee.
Yeah, that was important, and the feedback that you get from there is quite important. But the actual application for me, you have to really synthesize your skill set, your talents, the differences that you might have, and what you bring to the Fulbright specifically. They're looking for someone who is looking to build a bridge. Similar, is it Miriam who went to Russia? Okay, all right. Yeah, the State Department is more involved than I thought they would be in the Fulbright, at least in my own situation. But it's good if you have something that's more of a bridge builder from nation to nation. That tends to help. But just you have to be very succinct, and every sentence should count in your application, and you should get a lot of eyes on to get some feedback. I had a lot of support. Most of it, I mean, I don't think it would have been as good without Leanne and the other folks who did the first vetting process, and professors, and even your friends who are other. Just let people have a good look at it, be open to criticism, and make sure you punch really, really well when you write it.
So the components of the application include a statement of grant purpose, which is 2 pages for a study research grant, which is the type of grant that Trayvon did. And it's just 1 page for the English teaching assistantship. And then there's a 1-page personal statement that's very brief, and that can be actually challenging for a lot of people. So I suggest starting it early. Fulbright applications require 3 letters of recommendation for either type of grant. One big difference that I want to point out between the 2 different programs is that the English teaching assistantship places Fulbrights in a school. So they don't have to find their own placement or affiliation within the host country. Candidates, on the other hand, who are applying for study research grants, either propose an independent study project or the first year of a degree. So it's more of a graduate study award. In the case of research, there's always an affiliation with an in-country host who invites the Fulbright person to research collaboratively with them for that academic year. And so that's an important component to fulfilling the Fulbright ambassadorial mission of mutual understanding between the United States and other countries. And so the very first most important choice to make for a study research grant, besides the country, is who you're going to work with within that country and how you're going to form a mutually beneficial research relationship that will be acted upon if you receive the funding. Do you have any final thoughts to add, Trayvon?
It was amazing. It changed my life, honestly. Getting it, I didn't quite cry when I found out I got it, but it meant a ton to me, and it forever will be something that I look fondly upon. And I'm thankful, and I thank you, Leah, for helping me get through all the weeds and stuff.
Hey, I love my job. It's all good. And I see that Jordan has just joined us. Welcome. Hi.
Hey everyone.
How are you
Sorry
doing?
I'm a little late.
How are things at Stanford today?
Still virtual, but sunny and excellent. So doing well. I was repping my OSU hat today, though.
Right on. Love it. Well, your timing is perfect. We were just about to jump into talking a little bit about the Stanford Knight Hennessy Scholars Program. So do you want to tell us a little bit about your experience with the application?
Sure. Did you give an overview of the program, or do you need me to do that?
If you could do that, that would be great. I haven't done it yet.
Cool. So for those of you who don't know, the Knight Hennessy Scholarship is an international graduate level program at Stanford University. It is brand new. It was started in 2016 from a very generous gift from Phil Knight in collaboration with John Hennessy, who was the former renowned president of Stanford University. The program kind of, if you can see this on its website, but it generally kind of looks for leaders who are going to find creative solutions to big global problems. It has a similar model to the Rhodes Scholarship, where they try to take people from very different backgrounds and put them all in the same place and try to, hope that something exceptional comes out of that network and that cross-pollination of different disciplines and degrees and interests and backgrounds and perspectives. And then they also layer in addition to all the finances and stuff, they layer in leadership training, mentorship, experiential learning opportunities, things like trips abroad, and a lot of other, I was going to say creature comforts, which seems overly reductive, but they have like a residential hall, they have a string quartet in residence and food, and but they also have like scholars in residence, so authors and journalists, and anyways, it's an amazing program. So do you want me to run, Leanne, what's most helpful? Do you want me to run through some of those questions? Do you want to talk about the application process?
Yeah, so first of all, the purpose of the award, besides bringing together potential future global leaders, is also to provide a fully funded graduate degree at Stanford, which is one of the things that attracts a lot of people to it. But perhaps you could talk a little bit about the application process and what that experience was like for you.
Sure. So for those of you who don't know, I applied to the graduate school for business to get my MBA. I was accepted to that, and during my first year, I actually applied for a dual degree to get my master's in science in environment and resources. And it was at that time that I applied for the Knight Hennessy program. Most people apply before their first degree, but for personal reasons, I actually couldn't. The only reason I say that is I found out later that the person who used to do the admissions for the Stanford Business School was actually recruited to run admissions at Knight Hennessy, and the two processes are very similar. They really index for people who are emotionally, obviously they look for people who are intellectually excellent, intellectually, professionally excellent, who are motivated and passionate, but they also look for people who are very self-aware and socially and emotionally mature. And so the process is really designed to tease out, what's your story, and how does the Knight Hennessy program basically, what's your story up to this point, and how does the Knight Hennessy program help you write the rest of it? And so their questions are, the big essay question, for example, this year was, you had to watch the Steve Jobs commencement speech, and he talks about connecting the dots of his life, and they ask you to essentially do the same thing for them. Look back at your life and talk about the big events that really shaped you and connect the dots. And the second question kind of follows up to that, and it says, okay, now that you've connected the dots, tell us how the Knight Hennessy program essentially fits into the next 10, 20, 100 years for you. And And then they have a lot of questions that are designed to be kind of, they seem almost absurd when you read them at first. They're like, tell us 7 improbable facts about yourself. But they really actually are just trying to get to know you for who you are and your personality. They're not meant to be like subtle, humble brags about, you know, how you can juggle 6 balls with one hand or something. It's meant to be like funny and kind of interesting and personal. And then once you complete the application, they do, they have you submit a video, and they have a different prompt every year. This year was teachers, fellow scholars, something. And then they narrow it down to finalists, and they invite you to what they call the immersion weekend if you're one of the finalists. And that's really like an all weekend experience where you're taking classes and you're meeting your fellow finalists and you're doing interviews and everything else. So it's very intense. I think even just going through it, obviously, like with the good news, it's easy to say this, but having experienced rejection in my life before, I can tell you that even if it hadn't gone well, I think it's a very good process to go through if you have if you're interested in prestigious scholarships, because this one in particular is very self-exploratory. They really challenge you to kind of look inward and kind of tease out what matters most to you in your life. What are you passionate about? Who are you? What experiences have really shaped who you are? What a big part of what they try to get is what unique voice do you bring to the table, because it's a very diverse cohort. I want to say my cohort is it's 60% international. So it's very, very diverse, and they put a huge emphasis on that. So the process itself is grueling, it's intense, it's a lot of work, but at the same time, regardless of the outcome, I feel like I came out with a much clearer idea of who I was, what I bring, what unique talents and voice I bring to the table, and where I wanted to go in life. So very, very rewarding. What else, Leon, should I talk about?
What advice would you have for someone applying for the Knight Hennessy Scholars Program or another competitive scholarship?
Yeah, my number one piece of advice would be to go for it. I think there's a lot of, and I remember being in that place, like, I think there's just a lot of skepticism and cynicism about, oh, well, I didn't go to Harvard or Stanford or Princeton undergrad, and so I can't, maybe it's a waste of time to go through this process. And I can go into this if it's at all interesting, but needless to say, I had a very unique background where I came from personally, but also professionally. And so it took me like 8 years to graduate from OSU because I was working full time and pursuing career opportunities. And I ended up going to several different community colleges along the way. And I am not what you would call like a shoo-in for a scholarship like this or for a place like Stanford. But I'm not, there are other people like me here. So I've met a lot of, and the other thing I would say is like having come to Stanford and met with, and rubbing elbows with people here, but also like Knight Hennessy and my fellow cohorts, like they're brilliant. Like there are geniuses, they're exceptional people, they're amazing. But I've also met some like tremendously amazing people at OSU. And so I don't think anybody should ever be like intimidated or overly cynical about their odds of getting in. And I think if you have the interest and the drive, it's a lot of work, but just go for it. The process is worth it, and you never know if it's going to work out. The second thing is along those same lines. The one thing that really struck me, so another big piece of advice, talk to somebody who's done, like, no matter what program you do, talk to somebody who's gone through it. Like it's amazing what you learn. I mean, I'm really glad it turned out the way it did. But like looking back, it's like amazing how much I learned along the way. I benefited from already being here. And so I had like 2 classmates of mine in my MBA program who were Knight Hennessy scholars. So I just ruthlessly picked their brains about the process and what they did and how they pitched themselves and what people are looking for. And I just think that that's invaluable. And so that's number one. But number two, like one thing that I really learned is, and I was telling Leanne this, it's these programs are definitely looking less for like people who have the blue chip background. I mean, that it doesn't hurt. They're not looking for the same people that all have checked the same boxes. What they're really looking for, particularly at Stanford and Knight Hennessy, more than in a lot of the other top schools, is people who can demonstrate that they've done extraordinary things even in ordinary circumstances, right? So no matter where you're at, it doesn't have to be, you know, a Harvard or an Oxford or like any of these other, you know, prestigious places. You could be going to OSU, you could be taking, you know, engineering classes, but it's how you distinguish yourself among your peers and in the area where you're at that matters the most. Because if you can show, like, I published a paper, or I have my name on this, or I started a nonprofit, or I did, you know, whatever it is in your sphere, those are the people they're really looking for, because those are the people that, no matter where you put them, they're always going to find a way to excel and separate themselves. And so, as you're thinking about your application process, really think about that. Like, how do I demonstrate excellence, you know, where I'm at right now? And I think I had something else. Oh, I kind of mentioned earlier, like, there's a lot of power in just knowing your story. And this is not something I knew going into it, but really, like, it had to learn. You know, you can just put yourself, like, empathize with them for a second and put yourself in their shoes, right? They read thousands of these things. Like the Knight Hennessy, I think my cohort, I think they got something like 7,000 applications, 6,000, 7,000, I can't remember. Like, it was a lot, right? And they only end up accepting something like 80 people. So they're reading a lot of these things. Like, you really have to, like, just be compelling. And the best way to be compelling is not to, like, try to say what you think they want to hear. The best way is just like, I know myself and I know the value that I bring, and I'm just going to tell you my story. And a part of that is, again, the second piece is, once you know your story, like how you got to where you're at, then you have to describe to them, how does Knight Hennessy or Stanford help you write the rest of it, right? Because they don't just want somebody who's got a cool story and, like, knows where they're coming from. They also want to know, like, that you've thought about how they plug in, and that makes a big difference. So those would be my three things.
There's a couple of questions for you, Jordan. One is, I'm curious about your experience applying to Stanford itself. Could you speak to that? And then the second question is, how do you think that being in the Knight Hennessy Scholars Program will add to or complement your experience at Stanford?
Sure. So again, the MBA application, in particular, less so the Master's in Science application, but definitely the MBA was pretty similar to the Knight Hennessy. It wasn't quite as engaged. Just the blocking and tackling, it had 2 essay questions. Stanford MBA in particular is very famous for these. One is literally just what matters most to you and why, which is the most benign and open-ended question you could possibly ask a student that's just sweating, sitting there trying to, like, figure out how to tell you what you want to hear. And then the second one was like, why Stanford? And again, I think the MBA program really is looking for very similar things, like know your story, know your unique voice. You apply, and then they also have an interview process for the finalists to make it in, and then they end up taking about 50% of the people who do the interview. I'm just trying to condense stuff down, and, you know, feel free to ask a follow-up question if I don't hit, like, specifically what you're looking for, but I'm trying to give, like, an overview. The Stanford in particular, and I applied to Stanford, Harvard, kind of a handful of the top business schools. I was really struck by how different each school is, even within the MBA program. Like, I was going into it initially, I was really unprepared for how different the schools are, the ethos, the culture, and everything else. I would definitely put a lot of thought into that. Stanford in particular is really looking for those people that, it sounds corny, but like they want to change the world, right? Like they're very creative and entrepreneurial, and and they really value people who are different, right? So you don't have to fit any particular mold, but you do have to have, like, I know, you have to have this compelling concept of yourself, your passions, what you care about, and those types of things. And so that I think what really stood out for me was, again, like, my background was really unique, but I had overcome a lot of adversity to get to the place where I was at. And so a lot of the accomplishments I had, I was able to tell a very clear story about, this is the background I had, these are the challenges that I grew up with, and this is how it motivated me to do the things I did, and to be the person that I am. And here's, if you take a chance on me, this is what you're getting. And after I got here, I realized, like, Stanford in particular does this. It's pretty much across the board. It's definitely for business schools, and it's for the undergrad as well. Their school cohorts are just a lot smaller, right? So I'll use the business schools as an example because I know it the best, but the Harvard and Stanford routinely compete for 1 and 2. Harvard's class size is 3 times the size of Stanford's. So that really factors into how they pick their people. They're very, like, it's again, it's kind of reductive, but it's almost like picking a fantasy football team, right? You're like, it's not so much that you're trying to pick the 30 or 50 best people. You're trying to pick the 30 or 50 best people, best people for a whole team, right? And so they think very, very long and hard about, we have 400 people and we want them all to bring something unique and complementary, so that the whole, the sum is greater than the parts. And so I think, that is something, if you're thinking about applying to Stanford, that's something I would encourage you to do, is, like, really think about, recognize that, like, you don't have to be the absolute smartest or the richest or the best looking or any of these other, like, amazing things. You just need to know, kind of like, what's my story? How do I fit in? And what's my voice? And how do I bring them? That's, I think you're going to put your best foot forward. Yeah, I think that's, and then, my pieces of advice that I gave kind of for the Night Hennessy, I would give for Stanford as well. It's like, go for it. First off, like, I read a quote recently. It was like, it takes almost as much time to do small things as it takes to do big things. You might as well go for big things. Like, I think it's definitely worth the process. And I actually was rejected at Stanford the first time I applied. Funny enough, like, it was a very, like, heartbreaking moment for me, but I tried to apply my junior year, and I didn't want to do the 2+2 to the MBA program. And they told me, you can't actually apply while you're still in school. You got to graduate first. And I told them I didn't think the rules applied, and turns out I was wrong. But, it's like, even the first time when I, like, tried to get in and it didn't work, I recognized, like, I learned a lot by doing it. And then came back for a second shot, and it worked out. The second thing is, find somebody who's gone, like, I'm happy to talk and chat and, like, answer questions and help, because the people who helped me out, like, I'm forever grateful. And really just figuring out how you distinguish yourself even right where you're at. So again, feel free to follow up if I didn't answer the question. The second one, how do you think that being in the Night Hennessy Scholarship will add to? Oh, good question. Yeah, it's very interesting. So the really cool thing about the Night Hennessy, so I love my MBA cohort. Like, the MBA program is amazing. I'm learning things. Stanford it was my dream school. It's exceeded expectations in every single way that I can imagine. But the MBA program generally is still less. Stanford's the most socially motivated MBA program, but it's still not. You're not sitting there, actively learning. At its core, it's still like how to run a business and make money, right? So you're not it's a little less altruistic, I guess is the word I'm looking for. But it's interesting because despite how diverse everybody's backgrounds are, right? You have tons of international students and people from all these different industries and, you know, with varying degrees of work experience. It's amazing how like business people all kind of think like business people, right? And so it is a little myopic in that sense. And the Knight Hennessy program is really interesting because they essentially try to take the best of the best from all of the different graduate programs in the school and at Stanford, and they just put you in a room, and it's amazing the type of conversations you have. Like I was talking the other day with this one of my fellow scholars, and she is finishing up her MD at Harvard. She's now doing an MBA at Stanford, and she was a former professional women's soccer player, and like NCAA, you know, athlete of the year, All-American, like won national titles when she was playing soccer in college. You know, I met somebody who was like, that already written a book and was a published author. I met a guy who wrote an article. He was a Mexican journalist, and he'd written an article and broke a story on the attorney general who was corrupt, and the guy actually resigned 5 days later. So you meet these people, and they all have these like very unique ways of looking at the world and life experiences. And I've already learned a lot. So I think the number one is just the community, right? The people you're surrounded by are all exceptional, and they really just they're so motivated and passionate, and so you get a lot out of just being in that environment. And then the other thing is like the Knight Hennessy program really tries to layer in these leadership programs, and you get access to people who even at the MBA school you don't get access to. So like Condoleezza Rice came in and had dinner with the scholars the other day, and it was like a small group dinner where she's asked, you know, answering questions about foreign affairs and her time as Secretary of State, and you know, and then they have in-resident scholars. So the finances are great. Like it's nice to have that, but more importantly, it's the community, it's the people you meet, and it's these added leadership and mentorship opportunities that they really layer in.
Thanks. Does anyone have any additional questions for any of the panelists? All right, well, I want to thank you all so much for coming and sharing your experiences. I talk about this stuff all day long, and it's so great for me that you all came and shared your perspectives, because your words are so much more compelling to explain what these programs are all about than my own. And I think it's really helpful for all of us to see that OSU students can and do win these nationally competitive scholarships. And so thank you so much for your time, and I wish you all the best.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Thanks, Leanne.
Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.